sort of peripheral to the debate, but both the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and our former Taoiseach Bertie Ahern have both said that basically the Lisbon Treaty is more or less the same as the EU Constitution that was rejected by the Dutch and the French in 2005. Now, what changes have been made, or for what reason is the same substance or the same content on the table again?
Well, you know, that's a very fair point, because in fact the bulk of the treaty, it comes directly out of the Constitutional Treaty. Mind you, I would prefer to actually be out in the Irish people talking about the Constitutional Treaty. It's a much more coherent document. It's much easier to read. But what is different is, first of all, it is not a constitution. It is a treaty. And it's just a treaty that amends other treaties. So that's why, for example, other countries don't have to have a referendum. That's why the Conseil d'État in France could decide that there was no need for a referendum, because this was just going back to the old treaty system. So there's a significant difference between a consolidating document which brings into constitutional form specific rules and regulations, arrangements. There's a specific difference between that and a treaty which simply amends other treaties which everybody has already signed up to. If you think of Denmark, Denmark has like us, it tends to have referenda. It doesn't have to have a referendum in every case, but it has had referenda in the past. The Danes reviewed this, whatever their constitutional process, they said, look, the changes aren't significant. In Ireland, the tradition has been to have a referendum, and particularly since the Crotty case, the decision is to have a referendum. And that was because the higher courts, our constitutional courts, interpret our constitution saying that. But so different countries approach this in different ways, but the fundamental answer to your question is that this is a different approach to achieving the same purpose, i.e. amending. Now, the other thing that is different, of course, is that the trappings of statehood, nationhood, and even the title constitution are taken out. Some would say those are small things. From the point of view of symbols, however, they're not small things. And symbolism is very, very important when you're talking about nationality. Symbolism is very important. How do we define ourselves? We tend not to define ourselves as, white or whatever. It's not politically correct to do that anyway. But we do define ourselves as we live here, we share common values, we share a common culture. We define ourselves with a whole lot of symbols. So the symbols are important, although the people who say that it has all of the elements that are in a large proportion, 90% plus of the elements that are in the Constitutional Treaty, are telling the truth. Whether they're on the no side or the yes side, but I would say the 95% of the ones that we were supportive of anyway. We were the big supporters of this. Remember this. This treaty, the original Constitutional Treaty, was finalised during Ireland's presidency. The biomarks on the draft are Irish. All of the proposals that ran into difficulties, the compromises that were produced here in Ireland. We will never have an opportunity as a nation, never ever have the opportunity to have such influence on the treaty. And our good luck was, when it was rejected in France and in Netherlands, it fell back to another small country that had been part of our group working on the original treaty, Lisbon, the Portuguese, to work on it. We actually worked very closely. We had a group. It was called, sometimes we called it sort of open conspiracy. Small countries, small and medium countries. It wasn't that we felt threatened, but we wanted to be absolutely damn certain that we looked after our interests. And this treaty looks after the interests of small countries, and it does no harm or damage to the big countries. It's fair, it's equitable, it's balanced, it's democratic. And I would say to the people who watch your one thing that you can say without any fair contradiction is that Europe on the 13th of June will be a more democratic place if we vote yes, because it will give more powers to national parliaments, it will give more powers to the European Parliament, it gives more democratic control, it introduces a citizens' initiative. And although people will say, they're all symbolic, they're not symbolic. Democracy is at the very heart of the project. So if you build a project which is built on democracy, you build a project that will last.
Just to wrap it up, sorry, with regards to the French and the Dutch, do you feel that, considering we are, and you've emphasised it yourself, we are the only country having this referendum, and some people say it's a huge amount of responsibility, some people say it's a huge amount of pressure, do you not feel that perhaps the French and the Dutch governments should put it to their people again, given that it is more or less the same?
Can I tell you, if President Sarkozy came here in the morning and said that Ireland shouldn't have a referendum, I would give him a very short answer, and the second one would be off. None of his business to tell me, or you, or or any of your local viewers how we handle our constitutional affairs, and it's not our business to tell them. What President Sarkozy did in France when he went into an election, he said he wouldn't have another referendum, that there would be a renegotiation. So he got a democratic mandate from that. Ségolène Royal, on the other hand, said that she would have a referendum, and it was the same in the Dutch election, although I don't think the issue was as pronounced in the Dutch, and I don't want to exaggerate in any way. Some countries don't have referendum. I mean, Germany has, for good reason, has a certain aversion to referendum. Italy also has a certain aversion to it. And there are some countries where there's a dialogue which sees holding referendum as a way for politicians to just pass the buck to citizens and make hard decisions. I don't agree with that. I think referenda are very good. It's our tradition. It's not up to us to tell them what to do, and certainly, I can tell you this much, if any of them came here and told us we shouldn't have a referendum, and one or two comments were made about referenda in the Convention on the Future of Europe, and I remember one in particular being made, why are you Irish always worried about a referendum? Why do you hold a referendum? And actually held up a copy of the original Treaty of Rome. I said, you see this document? It talks about equality between the states. You should read it sometime. Our view is we hold referendum. That's the way we do our business. That's the way we drafted our constitution. You did differently. You mind your business. You mind ours.
Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, and Bertie Ahern have both been quoted in saying that the Lisbon Treaty is almost the same thing as the EU constitution that was rejected by the French and the Dutch in 2005. Now, what are the changes between the Lisbon Treaty and the EU constitution that allow for it to be now put on the table for the Irish in this referendum?
I promised a very good bottle of red wine to any person who can come with one example on a law which can be passed by the Constitution and not by the Lisbon Treaty. I still have the wine. I haven't, after hundreds of meetings, found one expert who could come with one single example of a law. So in obligations, the two texts are the same. But politically they agreed to avoid referendums. And therefore we have no referendums except the one we have in Ireland. And that's a pity. But I think this text, which is a far-reaching constitution, should be approved or rejected by a referendum in all European member states.
But surely, if there's admittance on the part of the biggest European leaders that this is the same thing, surely is there not some sort of a clause or something that obliges them to actually to accept the Dutch and the French decisions, or at least change it significantly so that it's a different concept at least? No, is there nothing in place?
I think it's not very wise to give in on a referendum when you have decided to have a referendum, as in France and the Netherlands you have even had the referendums, then just to come back, repack the articles in a new order and then come back with the same result. It's not fair to us the voters, and I'm afraid they will have serious reactions if the Lisbon Treaty should be approved that way.
Okay, well, moving on to one of the arguments that the pro-Lisbon Treaty supporters have continually mentioned is that the Lisbon Treaty will allow for a greater role for national parliaments in the decision-making process in the EU. Is this not surely what we need? Is this not going to strengthen democracy, and how exactly do they say that this will happen?
Since September last year, all national parliaments have been sent new proposals for new laws from the Commission. It was a major victory we gained in the cooperation between the national parliaments and the European Parliament from the Commission. And this thing which has been established, this practice which does exist today, is now written into the Lisbon Treaty. But there's no real change in the practices by the Lisbon Treaty, because it requires that 1/3 of the member states shall protest a proposal for reasons of subsidiarity before the Commission shall review it again, but they shall not change it. Only if 55% of the governments react against the proposal, stating that it's against the principle of subsidiarity, then the Commission would need to take it away. At 55%, that's more than it's needed already today. Today, 45% will be able to block a law from the European Union. So this treaty article allowing 55% of the governments to block has absolutely no content and will change nothing. It's just words to cheat the voters.
So we are, in fact, the Irish electorate, receiving the same benefits that they say we'll receive after the Lisbon Treaty, but we are receiving them at this present moment.
We have them today, and the Irish Parliament have one time only, used this right to send a letter to the Commission commenting on the proposal. The French Parliament have reacted 39 times, the German 20 times, the Swedish 17 times, the Danish 7 times, the Irish only one single time. So the problem on subsidiarity is with the Dáil. They do not use the right they already have to